Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben. Now to start this video, I want you to look at these two sentences and tell me if you think there's anything wrong with them. So a scientist will always question the results of his work. A good student does his homework on time. Is there anything wrong with those sentences grammatically? No, they're perfectly fine, right? But you will have noticed that both sentences use the masculine pronoun his, although they are referring to a generic noun. In the first sentence, the generic noun is scientist, and in the second, it's student. So in the past, this was completely normal. When you wanted to refer to a person and you didn't know their sex or their gender, or you were using a generic noun, as in these cases, it was the norm to use masculine pronouns, so he, him, his, or himself. In fact, in 1850, the British Parliament passed an act stating, "Words importing masculine gender shall be deemed and taken to include females." But nowadays, that's not the case. From around about the 1960s, things changed. Nowadays, it's really considered outdated, old-fashioned, and to put it bluntly, quite sexist to use masculine pronouns in this way. So what options do we have? Well, some authors, including the world-famous historian Yuval Noah Harari, go to the opposite extreme and use feminine pronouns in the same way. For example, in his book Homo Deus, he writes, "A cyborg doctor could perform emergency surgeries in Tokyo, in Chicago, and in a space station on Mars without ever leaving her Stockholm office. She will need only a fast internet connection and a few pairs of bionic eyes and hands." So in this case, Yuval Noah Harari is referring to a cyborg, which is a thing, right? But he chose to use a feminine pronoun to refer to this cyborg doctor in this case. So that's something that he chose to do. It's stylistic, and I'm guessing, or I'm assuming, that he did it to kind of try to redress the balance, or perhaps to highlight the importance of inclusivity. But I don't recommend that for you as English learners, or if you're planning to take an English exam. You don't have the luxury that a world-famous author has, and the examiners in an exam may find it a little bit confusing or strange if you use either the masculine pronouns or the feminine pronouns. So what other options do we have? Well, the most common gender-neutral pronoun we use is they. Now, it's probably a good moment to clarify that in this video, when I talk about gender-neutral pronouns, I'm referring specifically to the pronouns we use when the gender of the noun being referred to in the sentence is either unknown or irrelevant. So in this video, I'm not talking about the pronouns that people choose to use if they don't identify as either gender. That's for another video because it's a very big and sensitive topic. But in this video, I'm really focusing on the sort of more traditional uses of gender-neutral pronouns. So going back to they, we use they a lot as a singular pronoun when we don't know the gender, or again, it's a generic noun. So let's look at some examples. The author of the report makes it clear that they support government intervention. So here, I don't know, as the writer or the speaker of this sentence, I don't know whether the author of the report is male or female. So if I say he supports government intervention or she supports government intervention, I'm making an assumption. But using they as a gender-neutral pronoun, a singular pronoun, is a good and common option here. Another example, if anyone calls, tell them I'll call them back. Nobody has called at the moment, so it could be a man or a woman. Another example, somebody left their phone on the table. So somebody left their phone on the table. Again, we don't know who it was, so we can't know if it was a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. And in a question, you could say, who thinks they know the answer? Who thinks they know the answer? So maybe I'm asking my class, but the who here could be a man or a woman, so we're using the gender-neutral pronoun. Now, it's important to note that this is not a new use of they as a singular pronoun. It's been used in this way since the 14th century, believe it or not. So a lot of people think that this is a little bit of a manipulating of traditional grammar rules. It's not at all. This is a traditional grammar rule in itself. It's nothing new. We've been using it this way for hundreds and hundreds of years. But we do have another option for slightly more formal situations, but in similar cases as we've just seen. And that is to use he or she. So that as a phrase, he or she, not one or the other, he or she, no, he or she together. So let's go back to that example we looked at a moment ago with they, but replacing they with he or she. The author of the report makes it clear that he or she supports government intervention. So the difference here is that he or she is slightly more formal and it's referring to a person. Although we don't know the sex or the gender of the person, it is a person. It's not so common to use he or she when we use words like anyone or someone or somebody or nobody. I'll give another example before it gets too confusing. In the speaking test, the interlocutor will interrupt when he or she has enough content. Now, I could perfectly use they in this context, but I've chosen to use he or she, and it is a choice, it's a personal choice, because it's slightly more formal, it's a more formal context, an interlocutor in an exam, and I am referring to a person, an interlocutor, not just anyone, someone, or no one. It often depends on the personal choice of the speaker or the writer of the sentence. But there are a couple of problems when using he or she rather than they. The first problem is that it can get very clumsy or awkward if you have to repeat he or she or himself or herself a few times in the same sentence. For example, when someone expresses his or her opinion on a topic, he or she must remind him or herself that others may disagree with him or her. So in that case, it just sounds silly, doesn't it? Repeating he or she or him or her, himself, herself. It would sound much better using they, their, them. Another problem which you may want to take into consideration when you're deciding on whether to use they or he or she in your writings in particular is that many people, especially nowadays, don't identify as either male or female. So it may be considered a bit non-inclusive by using he or she. But that's a choice that you can take yourself, but it's something that maybe you want to take into consideration. So it's good to understand when and how we use these pronouns, but just be very careful and think about the style and the register you're using in your writing or when you're speaking, and choose the most appropriate pronoun. Now, if you need more help with your grammar, I have an online essential grammar course in which I look at all the most important grammatical structures to help you get to that advanced level of English. Check out all the details in the link in the description to this video. And I'll see you very soon for another video.